Why your paycheck feels smaller every year. The real math explained. Sarah gets a 4% raise. Feels good for exactly one afternoon. Then her rent renews at 8% up. Her car insurance jumped 22%. Groceries are the same basket, different number. She does the math one night and realizes she's actually making less than she was 3 years ago, in real terms. Not nominal, real. She didn't lose her job, she didn't make bad decisions, she got raises every single year. And she got poorer. Then there's Marcus. Same company, same salary bracket. Did everything the personal finance Reddit said. Emergency fund, max the 401k, index funds, frugal, and he's still 4 years further from owning a house than he was the day he started that plan. The finish line didn't move. The track got longer. Then there's the couple down the street. Dual income, 2 professional salaries, no kids, who make $175,000 combined and somehow still feel like they're one emergency away from a bad month. Here's the pattern. They're all running faster. The treadmill is speeding up faster than they are, and nobody told them the game changed. Nobody told them the math changed. And nobody told them the most dangerous thing of all, that feeling behind when you're doing everything right isn't a personal failure, it's a structural one. Here's what we're actually doing today. I'm going to break down why your real purchasing power is being eroded from 4 directions at once, not just inflation, 4 of them, and why the conventional advice completely ignores 3 of them. I'll show you the math on how a $75,000 salary in 2019 needs to be $97,000 today just to feel the same. I'll explain why the biggest financial leak in most people's lives isn't their latte, it's something they've never once thought to measure. And then I'll give you a real framework for getting off this treadmill, not with motivational garbage, but with actual mechanical adjustments that change the math in your favor. This isn't about grinding harder. It's about understanding the system you're trapped in and making deliberate moves to tilt it.
By the way, I built a free purchasing power calculator because most online inflation calculators use the government CPI figure, which systematically undercounts what middle-income households actually experience. This one uses a basket weighted for housing, healthcare, and food, the categories that eat the biggest chunk of middle-class income. I only ask for your email to send the report. I don't store any of your financial data. Link is in the description. If you're someone who feels like you're doing everything right and still not getting ahead, subscribe and like this video. It will help more than you think. Here's the mental model I want you to carry through everything we talk about today. Think of your financial life as a treadmill. You get on, you start walking. The machine is set at 3 miles per hour. You're told if you walk consistently, you'll get somewhere. What nobody mentions is that every year someone turns the speed up a little. First it was 3.1, then 3.4, then 4.2, then 5. You're walking faster to keep up. You're sweating, your legs hurt, but you're not moving forward, you're just not falling off the back. And here's the real trap. The speed knob isn't in your hands. You can run harder, but you can't control the machine. The only way to win is to step off the treadmill entirely, or at least get your foot on the frame, not the belt. That's what this video is about. Not running faster, understanding the machine. Let's start with the number that defines this whole conversation. Between January 2020 and January 2026, cumulative inflation as measured by the Standard Consumer Price Index was approximately 22%. That means something that cost $1,000 in 2020 costs around $1,220 today if we use the official number. But here's the problem with the official number. The CPI is a weighted average across all consumer categories, including things like apparel, entertainment, and used cars, things that sometimes go down. But most middle-class households spend the bulk of their budget on 3 categories: housing, healthcare, and food. And those 3 categories inflated dramatically above the average. Rent in the median U.S. market is up roughly 32% since 2020. Grocery prices are up 25 to 30% depending on your basket. Healthcare premiums for employer-sponsored plans rose an average of 22%, but for people buying on the individual market, increases of 30 to 45% were common in many states. If you weight inflation by how a real middle-class household actually spends money, the effective inflation rate for that demographic over the last 6 years was closer to 28 to 32%, not 22, not the headline number your senator quotes. Let me run the actual math on what that means. Sarah, from the beginning of this video, she makes $75,000 in 2020. Her company gives her a 3.5% raise each year, roughly in line with what most companies offer when they're not restructuring. After 6 years of compounding, she's making roughly $92,500. On paper, that's a $17,500 raise. That's meaningful money. But now, apply real-world inflation. To maintain the same purchasing power she had in 2020, her salary needs to be approximately $97,000 to $99,000 in 2026 using the adjusted basket. She's at $92,500. She got a raise of $17,500 and lost $4,500 to $6,500 in real purchasing power. She worked 6 more years and her standard of living declined. Not because she made bad decisions, because the treadmill sped up faster than her raises could compensate. Now here's the part that makes people angry when they really sit with it. That's only the first leak, the inflation erosion. We haven't even started. The second leak is taxes, not the headline rate, the effective tax drag. And I'm not talking about tax rates going up, which may or may not happen. I'm talking about something called bracket creep. In a properly functioning tax system, tax brackets adjust for inflation. When they don't, or when they adjust more slowly than real inflation, people get pushed into higher brackets even when they haven't gotten richer in real terms. Sarah got a nominal raise. Congratulations, she might now be in a higher marginal bracket on the additional income. She's being taxed as if she got wealthier. She didn't. She just kept pace, barely, and now she's paying a higher percentage on those new dollars. This is a second, quieter tax. Politicians rarely talk about it. It's not dramatic. It doesn't make headlines. It just silently slices another 1 to 2% off the real value of your raise every single year. Over a decade, that compounds into a 5-figure haircut. The third leak is what I call the insurance utility creep. This one is invisible because we pay it in so many small recurring charges that nobody ever adds it up. Car insurance up 22%, homeowners or renters insurance up 15 to 20%, internet provider raised the rate after the promotional period ended, streaming services all raised prices. Netflix went from $14 to $23 for standard, Spotify up, Amazon Prime up. Utilities, particularly electricity, spiked in most regions due to grid strain and energy price volatility. None of these are luxury spending. They're the cost of modern infrastructure. A full accounting of these recurring fixed costs for a middle-class household, car insurance, home or renter's insurance, health insurance if not fully employer covered, utilities, internet, and basic subscriptions easily runs $800 to $1,400 per month. 6 years ago, the same basket cost $600 to $1,000. That's a $200 to $400 monthly increase in fixed costs that has nothing to do with a lifestyle upgrade. You didn't get a better car. You didn't get a nicer apartment. The infrastructure just got more expensive, and you got no vote on it.
Here's the actual dollar number that lands this. If you spent $1,000 a month on fixed recurring costs in 2020, and that rose to $1,350 by 2026, that's $4,200 more per year in money that was already spent before you made a single discretionary decision. Over a decade, that's $42,000 in lost capacity, and that's before you factor in that the $42,000 itself would have compounded if invested. At a 7% average return, $4,200 per year over 10 years becomes roughly $58,000. The insurance utility creep didn't just cost you $42,000 in spending, it potentially cost you $58,000 in lost investment compounding. That's the real price of that invisible treadmill acceleration. Now, you might be thinking, Tom, this is all real, but these are forces I can't control. What's the point of understanding this? And here's the thing. You're half right. You can't stop the treadmill from speeding up, but you can absolutely change which parts of the treadmill your feet are on. Most people are running with both feet on the belt. A few understand which parts of their financial life are fixed and which parts are levers. The ones who get ahead don't run harder, they find the frame and put a foot on it. But first, let me give you the fourth leak. This one is the most underestimated. It's the cost of complexity. I know that sounds abstract. Let me make it concrete. Back in 1985, a middle-class family in America had a relatively simple financial life. 1 or 2 checking accounts, a savings account, maybe a pension, a mortgage.
No health savings account to track, no 401k to manage, no rollover IRA from the 3 previous jobs, no individual brokerage account where they're trying to DIY their own portfolio after watching a YouTube video, no multiple streaming subscriptions, no credit card reward optimization, no HYSA to transfer money into and back out of, no 5 different financial apps to manage. The cognitive load of managing modern personal finance is enormous, and cognitive load has a real cost. Studies on decision fatigue show that the more financial decisions you're asked to make, the worse each successive decision becomes, and bad financial decisions are expensive. The person who is mentally exhausted from managing their HSA, optimizing their credit card points, and tracking their HYSA transfers is the same person who then mindlessly approves a $20 monthly subscription they forgot about and lets their car insurance auto-renew without shopping it. The complexity of modern financial life eats your attention, and your attention is where money leaks go undetected.
Here's a concrete example. Let me tell you about Linda. Linda is 38. She makes $88,000 a year. She's got a 401k, an old IRA from a job she left 4 years ago that she keeps meaning to roll over, a high-yield savings account she opened for the 5.2% rate that's now at 4.1% because she hasn't reshopped, a credit card she's optimizing for points but carrying a small balance because cash flow got tight after her car needed new brakes, 2 streaming services she hasn't watched in 2 months, a gym membership, $49 a month, last went in October, a life insurance policy she opened because a friend in sales talked her into it in 2021. She's not sure she even needs it. She's not irresponsible. She's just overwhelmed. She doesn't have a money problem. She has a complexity problem. Her financial life has become a system too complicated to maintain without leaking. Conservatively, between the unnecessary life insurance, the underperforming HYSA, the subscription drag, and the credit card balance interest, she's losing $3,500 to $4,800 a year to pure friction. Not market risk, not bad investments, friction, complexity tax. The solution here isn't a budgeting app. That's like buying a bigger bucket for a leaky boat. The solution is simplification. Close the accounts that aren't earning their keep, automate the transfers that need to happen, shop the insurance once a year on a calendar reminder, cut the subscriptions, roll the old IRA. Each one of these is a one-time action that saves money every single month for years with zero ongoing effort. That's the frame of the treadmill. That's where you put your foot. Let me bring you back to history for a second, because what's happening right now isn't new. It's actually a predictable stage of a longer cycle, and understanding it is the only way to position yourself correctly. In the early 1970s, the United States had just come off the greatest economic expansion in modern history, the post-war boom. Middle-class wages had grown faster than inflation for nearly 2 decades. A factory worker could buy a house. A single income could raise a family. The treadmill was slow and you were actually moving forward. Then Nixon closed the gold window in 1971. The dollar was fully decoupled from hard assets. The Fed could print money more freely. And they did, partly to finance the Vietnam War, partly because the political incentive to stimulate before elections has always been too powerful to resist. The result was the stagflation of the 1970s, inflation surging above 10%, real wages declining for most workers. The treadmill didn't just speed up, it threw sparks. People who'd been doing everything right, saving, working steadily, felt the rug pulled out. Paul Volcker came in, raised rates to 20%, crushed inflation, and brought a brutal recession that took years to unwind. The people who survived that cycle and came out ahead were the ones who owned hard assets, real estate, commodities, businesses that could raise prices. The people who got destroyed were the ones with cash savings in low-yield accounts, watching their purchasing power get eaten alive. Here's what's different this time. In the 1970s, most American households had pension plans. You worked 30 years at a company, they guaranteed you a monthly check in retirement regardless of what inflation did. The risk of longevity and market volatility was on the employer. By 2026, fewer than 15% of private sector workers have defined benefit pensions. The risk has been entirely transferred to the individual. You get a 401k. You make the contribution decisions, you pick the funds, you manage the sequence of returns risk in retirement. You are the pension fund now, except you don't have an actuary, a team of analysts, or a government backstop. You have Fidelity's website and a YouTube channel you found.
This is the structural shift that makes the current moment more dangerous than the 1970s for the average household. The system that would have cushioned the blow no longer exists for most people, and the treadmill is still speeding up. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Tom, this is dark. What am I supposed to actually do? And here's where I want to be very specific, because I see a lot of financial content that gives you principles when you need protocols. Action step 1. Calculate your real wage growth number tonight. Not nominal, real. Take your current gross salary, find your salary from 5 years ago, calculate the percentage increase. Now go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics CPI calculator and look up the cumulative inflation over the same period for your metro area. It will be different from the national number. If your wage growth percentage is higher than the inflation percentage, you have real wage growth. Congratulations, you're actually winning. If they're close or inflation is higher, you have real wage decline. You need to know this number because it changes every decision you make going forward. Most people have never done this calculation. They look at their higher salary and feel good without realizing they need to look at what that salary actually buys. Action step 2. Run a complexity audit. I call this the 90-day rule. Go through your bank statements and credit card statements from the last 90 days. List every single recurring charge, every subscription, every insurance premium, every membership fee, every service. For each one, ask 3 questions. Did I use this in the last 90 days? Would I sign up for it today at the current price? Is there a cheaper alternative that covers 80% of what I need? Anything that fails 2 of the 3 questions, cancel it. Most people who do this exercise find $150 to $400 per month in subscriptions and recurring services they had either forgotten about or were keeping out of inertia, not need. That's $1,800 to $4,800 a year. That's a Roth IRA contribution. That's the kind of money that compounds into something meaningful over a decade.
Action step 3. Shift fixed costs from variable to fixed wherever possible. This sounds counterintuitive, but stick with me. When your car insurance renews, don't just auto-pay. Call 2 competitors and get quotes. This one phone call once a year saves the average household $200 to $400 annually on car insurance alone. Same with internet, same with homeowners and renters insurance. These are recurrences that auto-renew on loyalty pricing, which means you pay more for staying than a new customer pays for switching. You are being penalized for inertia. The insurance industry literally models for the fact that most people won't switch. Their business model depends on your laziness. Once a year, shop the fixed costs. Set a calendar reminder. Make it a ritual. This is not exciting. It is extremely effective. Action step 4. Reframe your savings rate as the primary variable, not your investment returns. This is the one that most people hear and dismiss and then regret. There's a famous analysis by financial researcher Michael Kitces showing that for someone in the accumulation phase of their financial life, before retirement, when they're still saving and contributing, your savings rate has 10 to 15 times more impact on your final outcome than your investment return. Think about what that means. You are spending enormous mental energy optimizing which index fund to pick, whether to tilt toward value or growth, whether to put 5% in international or 10%, and that whole exercise, even if you get it right, moves the needle far less than the simple, brutal question of how many dollars you're moving from income to investment every single month. If you're contributing $500 a month to your investments, you are building a foundation. If you increase that to $700, not through a raise but through a complexity audit and spending cut, you've changed your trajectory. The math on an extra $200 a month over 25 years at 7% average return is approximately $162,000. $162,000 from canceling subscriptions and shopping your insurance once a year. The math is embarrassing in its simplicity, which is exactly why most people ignore it and instead obsess over picking the right stock. Action step 5. Build a real purchasing power floor. This is what I think most people are actually missing when they feel like they're getting poorer. They have savings, they have investments, but they don't have income that's immune to the treadmill. Here's what I mean. Interest income from treasury bonds adjust for nothing. Dividend income from most stocks adjusts slowly, if at all. But TIPS, Treasury Inflation-Protected Securities, adjust their principal for inflation automatically. I bonds, Series I, U.S. savings bonds, are designed to match CPI. Real estate rent, when properly structured, increases with market rates, which tend to track inflation over time. Building even a small layer of income that is mechanically linked to inflation is not a guarantee, nothing is, but it means part of your financial foundation moves with the treadmill instead of against it. You don't need to build a fortune in TIPS. Even having 15 to 20% of your bond allocation in inflation-protected securities gives your portfolio a meaningful hedge against the scenario where the treadmill is still speeding up 10 years from now.
Here's where the psychology gets really important. Because I know that some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'm behind, I've lost ground. The math has been working against me and I didn't even know it. And that feeling, that sinking feeling of realizing you've been running hard on a machine that's faster than you is genuinely demoralizing. I want to address that directly. Understanding that the treadmill is speeding up doesn't mean you're doomed. It means you finally know what you're actually dealing with. Most people are fighting an enemy they can't see. They feel the pain, the paycheck doesn't stretch, the savings feel inadequate, the goals feel further, but they attribute it to their own failure. They're not saving right, they're not disciplined enough, they made bad decisions. This is exactly what the system wants you to believe. Because if the problem is you, the solution is self-help. If the problem is structural, the solution is strategy. Strategy is harder than self-help, but it actually works. Let me bring this full circle with the treadmill. You get on the machine, you start walking. Someone turns up the speed. You have three options. You can walk faster and try to keep up. That's the grind more approach, and it works up to a point before your health, your relationships, or your sanity gives out. You can find the off switch. That's financial independence, owning enough assets that passive income replaces the treadmill entirely, and we've talked about that in previous videos. Or you can do what most people never think to do. Get a hand on the frame. 1 foot on the belt, 1 foot on the frame. Stop using all of your energy just to stay on the machine. Use some of it to build the thing that eventually lets you step off. The complexity audit, the real wage calculation, the inflation-linked income layer, these are your hands on the frame. They don't solve everything, but they stop the bleeding. And stopping the bleeding is how you stay in the game long enough for compound growth to do its job. Here's the actual case study I want to leave you with. A couple, 35 and 37. Combined income, $130,000. They felt the squeeze. Raises every year, never felt like enough. Did the real wage calculation and discovered their actual purchasing power had declined 6% over 5 years despite consistent raises. Ran the complexity audit, found $380 per month in recurring costs they could eliminate or reduce. Used that $380 plus a reallocation from their cash savings, which was sitting at a 2.9% account, to an HYSA at 4.6% to bring their monthly investment contribution from $1,400 to $1,980. No new income, no side hustle, no magic strategy, just the math. Over the next 15 years, that additional $580 per month compounds conservatively at 6% average return to roughly $165,000 extra in their portfolio. They didn't run faster. They identified which parts of their treadmill were running against them, and they stopped feeding it. They put a hand on the frame. Here are your 3 takeaways. 1. Your real wage growth is the only number that actually matters. A 5% raise in a 7% inflation environment is a pay cut. Calculated, know it, because you can't solve a problem you haven't measured. Most people are flying blind on the most important financial metric in their lives. 2. Complexity is not neutral. Your financial life has a complexity cost: cognitive load, subscription drag, inertia pricing, unused services. Every dollar and every minute you spend managing a financial system that's too complicated to maintain is a dollar and a minute not building toward independence. Simplify aggressively, not for minimalism's sake, for efficiency's sake. 3. The treadmill is not your enemy. The treadmill is the environment. The question is whether you understand how it works well enough to stop fighting it and start using it. The people who get off the treadmill aren't the ones who ran hardest, they're the ones who figured out the machine. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. The treadmill only wins if you stay on the belt forever. The math says you don't have to, you just have to understand the machine. If you want to see exactly how I calculate a real inflation-adjusted retirement number, not the oversimplified 4% rule version, the one that accounts for healthcare inflation, sequence of return risk, and real spending patterns, there's a video on this channel breaking down the full framework. No affiliate links, just math. Thanks for watching.